The story begins several decades ago in the kingdom of Dietrich, where an atmosphere of dread and violence had consumed the land. Beast-like vampires were attacking humans relentlessly, while others, far more dangerous, had concealed themselves among the high-ranking nobility, orchestrating kidnappings and human trafficking from the shadows. The entire kingdom was shrouded in fear, with no end in sight. That end, however, eventually came, brought by two remarkable individuals, former Duke Levi Evans and Saintess Sophia. Together, they uncovered the true masterminds behind the chaos, the pure-blood vampires, the noblest of their kind, whose intellect and physical abilities far surpassed those of ordinary humans. These purebloods had been engineering a takeover of the kingdom from within, but Levi and Sophia exposed them, and ultimately eradicated their entire lineage. Peace, it seemed, had finally been secured. Years later, on a stormy night inside a dark and foreboding castle, a mysterious man with piercing red eyes stands before a blonde woman. He asks if she is prepared. She confirms. This is the contract they had agreed upon. As he draws close, she feels her body heat up, her thoughts racing, wondering why she always reacts this way whenever he is near. The scene then shifts to a suffocating family dinner. Eleanor, the adopted daughter of Count Topaz, is being reprimanded for rejecting yet another suitor. When pressed for a reason, she states plainly that she simply didn't care for the man's face. Her father erupts, demanding she stop being so selective. But Eleanor thinks to herself, she has already lost the man she loved most. Surely, she is allowed at least this one small selfishness. She then reflects on the suitors being presented to her. Each one, she notes, may appear flawless on the surface, but every single one would bring profit to the Count's family. Vulgar men, all of them unworthy of her sister Angela. She remarks dryly that it will be difficult finding someone better than Lord Jules, the man Angela had stolen from her. Her father explodes in rage. Angela dissolves into tears, playing the victim perfectly. Eleanor watches, thinking to herself just how shameless this woman truly is. And she had every reason to think so. Eleanor's life had never been easy. Adopted from an orphanage purely for her beauty, she was initially cherished by her parents as though she were their own. But 1 year later, Angela was born, and everything changed. Their warmth evaporated. Eleanor became a nuisance, a mistake they regretted but felt too ashamed to undo. She grew up terrified of being abandoned, hiding in the corners of the mansion, invisible to servants, fed poor, quality meals while her calls went ignored. Angela, watching all of this from childhood, learned exactly how to treat Eleanor. She called her sister, but her eyes looked at her like she was something beneath her. If Angela cried, Eleanor was whipped. If Angela whined, anything Eleanor owned was stripped away and handed over. The rule of the household was simple and brutal, never upset Angela's mood, for if she so much as frowned, unbearable pain would follow. That was the life Eleanor had known. Reading faces, suppressing herself, surviving in silence. Until the day she met Jules. In a memory from the library, a young man approaches her gently, careful not to startle her. He introduces himself. Jules Keister, visiting while his father negotiates with the Count. Eleanor moves to excuse herself, but Jules reaches out and stops her. Eleanor once asked Jules how he had recognized her so easily, and he replied that he had known at a single glance. He then praised her, claiming that no young lady was as famous for her beauty as she was, and politely asked if she would guide him through the library. Eleanor agreed, though she privately believed his words were merely a polite way of referring to her reputation as a pitiable woman. Even so, his gentle attitude gradually affected her. Jules continued to speak kindly to her, and before long Eleanor realized she had fallen in love with him. From that point onward their relationship moved forward quickly, and her parents, who seemed almost relieved at the idea of her leaving, readily approved their engagement. Sometime later, during a quiet evening together, Jules confessed that he could no longer restrain his feelings for her. Eleanor hesitated, unsure of herself, but he reassured her by reminding her that they would soon become husband and wife. During their intimate moment he asked whether she felt good, yet Eleanor admitted that she did not really understand what she was supposed to feel. Jules casually told her not to worry and insisted that she would understand after they had done it many times. Wanting to endure things for the sake of the man she loved, Eleanor stayed silent and forced herself through the experience. Inside, however, she felt only discomfort and suffering rather than affection. A sense of disgust slowly overwhelmed her until she finally pulled away and apologized, saying she was not feeling well. Jules reacted with irritation, accusing her of making it sound as if he were to blame. Startled, Eleanor quickly denied that intention and tried to calm him, suggesting they could try again another day. At the time, she believed that tolerating such things was simply something she had to do for him. Her world collapsed soon afterward when she discovered Jules embracing her sister Angela. When confronted, Jules immediately tried to claim that the situation was not what it looked like, but Eleanor demanded an explanation. Overcome with anger and pain, she cried out, asking why Angela always took everything from her, even the man she loved. Instead of answering her, Jules stepped forward protectively and told Eleanor to stop. Shocked, she questioned why he was shielding Angela after promising to spend his life with her. Jules coldly replied that although he had once loved her, witnessing what he called her true nature had deeply disappointed him. He cruelly described her as as a frigid woman incapable of satisfying a man and declared that he was tired of being with her. Those words left Eleanor shattered. She began to believe that she truly lacked something essential as a woman, realizing that even when she had been with the person she loved, she had never once felt pleasure, only discomfort and revulsion. In the present, Eleanor firmly told her father during dinner that she no longer intended to marry. Her father exploded in anger, calling her ungrateful and reminding her that their family had raised her despite her not sharing their blood. According to him, her duty was to repay that kindness by marrying into a powerful noble house and leaving their home as soon as possible. Eleanor responded coldly that she had never asked them to raise her, enraged by her defiance. Her father accused her of causing Angela distress because her unmarried state supposedly made her sister feel guilty. Eleanor laughed bitterly at the claim that Angela felt any guilt at all. Finishing her wine, she calmly declared that if marriage was truly necessary, she would find a husband on her own terms. She clearly understood that her family intended to use her for political advantage, and she resolved not to let that happen. Not long after, Eleanor made an unexpected request. She asked permission to attend Angela and Jules' engagement celebration. She reasoned that as Angela's sister, her absence would appear strange to the nobility. When the day arrived, she entered the grand hall dressed elegantly in blue. Whispers immediately spread among the gathered nobles, many surprised to see her after she had avoided social events since her broken engagement. Eleanor had anticipated such reactions, so she remained calm and composed. Despite the tension surrounding her presence, she stood by her decision, believing that attending the party was necessary to maintain appearances and to show that she would not hide any longer. Eleanor's father avoided her gaze and awkwardly claimed he had only been concerned about her well-being. Eleanor calmly reassured him that he did not need to worry, explaining that her heart had healed enough for her to celebrate Angela and Jules' engagement. Her father seemed ready to object, but Angela entered with a bright smile and said she had no problem with Eleanor attending. She insisted that her sister genuinely wished to celebrate them, leaving Eleanor to agree with a polite smile. Privately, Eleanor made a firm decision. She resolved to stop worrying about how her parents reacted to her and to stop living cautiously around Angela. From now on, she told herself she would act with confidence instead of constantly holding herself back. At that moment, the crowd suddenly grew excited as someone announced the arrival of Lord Clive. Eleanor looked toward the entrance as Duke Clive Evans appeared, drawing attention from everyone present. Because of his mysterious appearance and the many romantic rumors surrounding him, high society secretly referred to him as the Vampire Duke. Some ladies even joked that they would not mind if he were the one to drink their blood. Eleanor thought the nickname was rather exaggerated, though she suspected the rumors of him being a womanizer might contain some truth. After observing him briefly, she turned away, unaware that his gaze lingered on her. Soon the main couple of the evening finally appeared. Jules greeted Eleanor coldly and admitted he never expected her to attend their engagement party. Eleanor asked whether he intended to claim that the broken engagement had been entirely her fault. Instead of denying it, he implied that she should think so herself. Around them, nobles began whispering that Eleanor had ruined the engagement through an affair and shamelessly dared to show up. Hearing this, Eleanor was shocked and wondered when such a rumor had even begun. Before she could respond, Angela stepped in and took her hand. Speaking sweetly, she asked whether Eleanor had already spoken to the man she was interested in and suggested she no longer needed to hide it. Angela implied that Eleanor had only attended because the man she liked was present and even claimed she supported her sister. The surrounding nobles quickly began gossiping, and Eleanor realized that denying the story would only make her look more suspicious. As she looked at Jules, Eleanor couldn't help wondering why he had been the one she met first. Leaning close, Jules cruelly whispered that Angela was his true destined partner and that if he had met her earlier, he never would have proposed to a woman who could not properly satisfy him at night. The words left Eleanor speechless and humiliated. Unable to endure the situation, she quietly excused herself, saying she felt unwell. After congratulating them on their engagement and wishing them happiness, she hurried away in tears while Angela watched with clear satisfaction. Outside in the garden, Eleanor's emotions finally overflowed. She blamed herself for being unable to speak up, even though she knew her feelings had never changed. Jules and Angela were the ones who had betrayed her. As she stood there crying, a sudden voice asked why she was weeping. Startled, Eleanor turned around and found Duke Clive Evans standing behind her. Duke Clive quietly offered Eleanor a handkerchief and told her to wipe away her tears. Embarrassed to have been seen crying, Eleanor accepted it and apologized for showing him such an unpleasant sight. She politely said she would return the handkerchief later, but the Duke dismissed the idea, explaining that there was no reason to return something once it had already been given. He then returned to his earlier question and calmly asked why she had been crying in the garden. Eleanor hesitated, assuming he must have already heard the rumors surrounding her broken engagement with Jules. She felt that anything she said would be meaningless because someone like him would never understand her situation. However, Clive surprised her by bluntly stating that it appeared her clever younger sister had stolen her fiancé. Startled, Eleanor asked how he could possibly know something like that. The Duke explained that it had been obvious, simply from observing the situation from afar. According to him, Eleanor's frightened and wounded expression did not resemble that of a woman who had betrayed her fiancé. Instead, he noted that her sister had had looked strangely pleased while Eleanor was being humiliated. Addressing her directly as Eleanor Topaz, the Duke gently lifted her chin so she would look at him. He asked whether she wanted to get back at the people who had hurt her. After a moment of hesitation, Eleanor admitted that she did. Clive then told her to come with him to the Evans family mansion. The sudden invitation confused her, and she wondered why he would want to take her there at all. Before going any further, Eleanor stopped him and spoke honestly. She insisted that she was not the kind of woman he seemed to think she was and warned that he would eventually be disappointed if he expected anything from her. She explained that she was asexual and that even when she had been with a man, she had never felt anything at all. No matter how many times it happened, her body simply did not respond. Because of that, she believed spending time with her would only waste his time and eventually lead him to regret bringing her to his home. To her complete surprise, the Duke suddenly laughed and remarked that if she truly was asexual, that actually worked in his favor. Still confused by his reaction, Eleanor tried to understand what he meant. Without warning, Clive pulled her closer and kissed her. The unexpected action left her stunned, her heart racing as she struggled to process what had just happened. When he finally pulled away, he calmly observed that something he had suspected seemed to be true. Flustered and breathless, Eleanor demanded to know why he would suddenly do something like that, reminding him again that she was not a suitable partner. The Duke clarified that he had no intention of making her his partner for romantic or physical reasons. Then, to her shock, he simply asked if she would marry him. Eleanor immediately assumed he was teasing and told him to stop. Clive, however, insisted that he was completely serious. She questioned how a proposal at their very first meeting could possibly be anything but a joke. The Duke then explained that what he was offering was not a traditional marriage but a contract marriage. From his perspective, it would be beneficial for her because marrying him would allow her to leave her family home and escape her sister's influence. Eleanor remained skeptical and asked what he would gain from marrying someone like her, pointing out that she came from an ordinary noble family and had been raised in an orphanage. Clive replied that there was something only she could do for him, something he could obtain from no one else. When Eleanor asked what that meant, he told her he would reveal it only if she agreed to the marriage. Refusing to accept a contract without knowing its conditions, Eleanor declined the offer and told him he should find someone else. She insisted that from now on she intended to live alone. With that, Eleanor walked away, leaving the Duke standing silently in the garden as he watched her go. From a distance, Angela had witnessed the interaction and felt both confused and jealous, unable to understand why someone like Duke Evans would show interest in Eleanor. Later that night, after finally returning to the safety of her room, Eleanor collapsed onto her bed, exhausted from everything that had happened that day. Late that night, Eleanor lay in bed replaying the Duke's sudden proposal in her mind. She muttered to herself that he must be an incredibly arrogant man if he believed she would agree to a contract marriage so easily after meeting him only once. Yet despite her irritation, she could not ignore the strange feeling that still lingered from the unexpected kiss he had given her. It was something unfamiliar, something she had never once experienced during her entire relationship with Jules. Confused, she touched her lips while trying to understand what that sensation had been, but before she could dwell on it further, a knock interrupted her thoughts. Angela entered the room with a gentle smile and claimed she had something important to tell her. Speaking in a deceptively sweet tone, she announced that she would not be marrying Lord Jules after all. Eleanor was stunned and immediately demanded to know whether Angela understood the weight of what she was saying. After stealing him away, was she now planning to simply abandon him? Angela, however, showed no concern. Instead, she asked if Eleanor still loved Jules, pointing out how strange it was that she seemed to be defending a man who had betrayed her. Angela then explained that since she had only just come of age, she felt it would be wasteful to settle down so quickly. If she waited, she might attract a man of far higher rank than Jules, and he himself had already agreed to postpone the marriage. Hearing this, Eleanor felt both disgusted and bitter. The man who had humiliated and discarded her had done so for someone who treated the entire situation like a casual opportunity. Angela then turned cruel, mocking Eleanor for judging other men when she had once tearfully claimed to love Jules. She coldly remarked that Eleanor was already 25 with a broken engagement, which in noble society made her little more than unwanted leftovers. Leaning close, Angela whispered that even if Eleanor dressed in fine jewels, no one would want to marry someone like her, a mere fake sister. After delivering those cutting words, Angela cheerfully wished her good night and left the room, leaving Eleanor alone with her thoughts. Elsewhere that night, Duke Clive sat in his private study reviewing documents about Eleanor Topaz. His attention focused on one particular detail: she was the woman said to possess the sacred ruby. Staring out into the darkness, he quietly concluded that she was the person he had been searching for and even referred to her as his savior. With determination, he resolved that he could not allow her to slip away from him. The following morning, Eleanor sat at her vanity after a sleepless night. In her hands was a letter from the Duke requesting another proper discussion about marriage when he visited the Topaz estate. She could not understand why a notorious womanizer brother like him would go so far just to pursue her and suspected it might simply be a passing whim. Reminding herself not to be carried away by his behavior, she tried to stay cautious. When they finally met for tea, the Duke asked whether she had reconsidered his offer of a contract marriage. Eleanor admitted she had thought about it, but still refused, explaining that after everything that had happened, she was exhausted by men and the idea of marriage itself. Clive calmly argued that a contract marriage was different because neither of them would expect love, meaning their relationship would remain uncomplicated. He pointed out the advantages. As his Duchess, she would escape her sister's influence, gain revenge on Jules, and live with immense wealth, even inheriting everything after his death. Though Eleanor admitted the offer sounded appealing, she still could not understand why he was so determined to marry her. Looking directly at her, the Duke then asked if she would accept the proposal if he revealed his true reason. During their meeting, Eleanor was startled when the Duke suddenly reached out and caught her by the arm. As he leaned closer, she flushed and demanded to know what he was doing. Instead of answering directly, his gaze settled on the necklace resting against her collarbone. He declared that the jewel she wore, the sacred ruby, was the true reason he desired her. Confused by the unfamiliar name, Eleanor listened as he explained that the ruby was an Evans family heirloom, passed down for generations as a symbol of prosperity. It had been lost during his father's time, and he had long believed it gone forever. The moment he saw her wearing it at the party, he had recognized its unmistakable brilliance and felt compelled to approach her, hoping to finally reclaim what his family had lost. Eleanor acknowledged his explanation but questioned whether he could truly be certain. She revealed that she had been discovered as an infant clutching the ruby when she was abandoned at an orphanage, which made it difficult for her to believe it originally belonged to the Evans family. Clive remained unwavering. He insisted that the gem's radiance was unlike any other and that it must have been sold before eventually finding its way to her. Then, fixing her with a steady gaze, he admitted that beyond the jewel itself, she was the first woman who had ever genuinely captured his interest. If they married, he said, both she and the sacred ruby would come to the Evans family together. In exchange, he would ensure she lived a life of complete comfort and wealth. From his perspective, it was a perfectly reasonable arrangement. Though Eleanor could not deny how advantageous the proposal sounded, she raised another concern: the issue of producing an heir. She reminded him of her asexual nature and explained that intimacy brought her neither pleasure nor ease, only discomfort. Living under constant pressure to bear children would hardly feel like freedom. The Duke quickly reassured her that she need not worry. He had no intention of having children with her and planned to adopt instead. While Eleanor silently wondered whether that meant he would seek physical comfort elsewhere, she kept the thought to herself. When he asked if this clarification made her more inclined to accept the contract, she requested additional time to consider it. Clive agreed without hesitation, stating he would wait for her favorable answer. Later, alone in her room, Eleanor reflected on everything. The contract marriage offered nothing but advantages on the surface: security, independence, revenge, and wealth. Yet she questioned whether she could truly trust the Duke's motives. As she studied the ruby in her hand, she remained troubled by how such a treasure could have ended up with her in the first place. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. To her surprise, Jules entered carrying a bouquet, behaving as though they were still on cordial terms. He commented on her cold demeanor and reminded her that they would soon be family through his marriage to Angela. Eleanor felt anger rise within her as she remembered his cruel words at the engagement party. Jules soon admitted that he had originally come to see Angela, but she had turned him away yet again, claiming to be busy. It was the third time she had refused to meet him, and he asked Eleanor if she knew the reason for Angela's sudden distance. Eleanor responded coolly that she knew nothing and questioned whether that was truly why he had come to her room. His agitation revealed the truth: he had sought her out only because Angela had rejected him. She pointed out that they were no longer close enough to discuss such matters and warned that Angela would not appreciate him being there. When Jules mockingly asked whether she was jealous, Eleanor firmly told him to stop joking and leave, stating she had no advice to offer. Irritated, he called her a cold woman and claimed that her attitude was the reason she would never marry. In response, Eleanor calmly declared that she would indeed be getting married, and sooner than he or Angela expected. Jules was left stunned, struggling to believe she could have found another man so quickly. Eleanor refused to elaborate and ordered him out. As he departed in disbelief, he could not help but wonder who she intended to marry. In a lavish hallway, Jules confronts Eleanor with open mockery, accusing her cold behavior of being a clumsy attempt to make him jealous. He calls her foolish and careless, insisting that if she intended to provoke him, she should have devised a smarter scheme because men are not swayed by such obvious tactics. Eleanor responds with icy disbelief, asking whether he truly thinks her indifference is an act. Undeterred, Jules arrogantly claims she is still hung up on him and need not hide it. He reminds her that he has already chosen to spend his life with her sister, Angela, and declares he cannot return Eleanor's supposed feelings, offering her a bouquet. He suggests they should at least maintain harmony as future in-laws. After bidding her a smug farewell, he leaves her standing alone. Disgusted, Eleanor mutters that the encounter was unbearable and carelessly drops the flowers into a nearby vase. Later in her room, Eleanor reflects on her impulsive claim that she would soon marry. In truth, she remains uncertain, accepting Accepting the Duke's proposal would mean entering a ducal house and shouldering immense responsibility. Though the match promises security and advantage, it is not a decision she can treat lightly. When her maid Jane brings tea and gently inquires about her health, Eleanor admits she is merely exhausted from an earlier visitor. Observing Jane's consistent kindness, rare among the otherwise cold servants, Eleanor wonders if she might take someone so trustworthy with her should she marry into House Evans. Testing the idea, Eleanor asks whether Jane would follow her if she wed into another family. Startled, Jane hesitantly brings up rumors that the Duke of Evans has proposed. Realizing the news has already spread among the staff, Eleanor confirms the rumor but admits she has not yet given her answer, though she is considering it favorably. Jane, fidgeting with concern, cautiously questions whether the Duke can truly be trusted. She reveals that she recently saw Angela speaking with him in the courtyard, behaving with unsettling familiarity. Eleanor's thoughts darken at the suggestion of history repeating itself. Angela has always taken what she desires, as she once did with Jules. Though Jane apologizes for upsetting her, her loyalty deeply moves Eleanor. She reassures her maid, expressing confidence that the Duke is not a man easily swayed by Angela's charms. Meanwhile, in the courtyard, Angela convinces herself that the Duke could never genuinely prefer Eleanor and believes she is far better suited to become his Duchess. Spotting him, she introduces herself sweetly and claims long-standing admiration. Privately, she assumes men favor gentle, delicate women and that Eleanor's appeal is shallow and fleeting. The Duke, however, responds coolly, stating he came only to visit Eleanor. Angela is irritated by his indifference but presses on, asking whether he truly proposed. With calm finality, he confirms that the proposal is indeed real, leaving no room for doubt. Angela is stunned that the Duke chose Eleanor, blurting out her disbelief. When he coolly asks what she means, she quickly masks her shock with feigned concern. She urges him to reconsider, implying he proposed without knowing Eleanor's true nature. Pretending to confide in him, Angela falsely claims Eleanor's broken engagement was due to infidelity and even alleges she suffers from a mental illness, warning she may betray him after marriage. Through fake tears, she insists she only wants to protect them both. Instead of believing her, the Duke laughs, seeing through her act. His expression turns icy as he declares he despises women who are all facade and no sincerity. The Duke burst into mocking laughter as he looked at Angela, bluntly admitting that he had simply been amused by how convincingly she pretended to care. His tone shifted from playful ridicule to cold contempt as he leaned closer, his gaze sharp and predatory. He declared that the type of woman he despised most was one who relied on empty words without any real substance. Though visibly shaken, Angela struggled to keep her composure and respectfully insisted that he had misunderstood her intentions. When he questioned her choice of the word misunderstood, she persisted, suggesting that he was merely infatuated with her sister and therefore unwilling to see the truth. She claimed she only wished for him to know what was real. Unmoved, the Duke replied that even if her claims were true, they would not be enough to make him retreat. He stated that even if Eleanor were to betray him after marriage, he would neither blame her nor grow angry. His calm acceptance left Angela stunned, prompting her to wonder whether his indifference meant he did not truly love her sister. In response, he asked her with clear disdain whether forcing someone's affection was her idea of love. Unable to answer, Angela faltered. The Duke sighed and warned her that if she valued herself at all, she should stop trying to drag her sister down, as such malice would inevitably return to harm her. With that, he coldly excused himself and walked away, leaving Angela trembling with frustration and confusion. Several weeks later, a carriage carrying Eleanor approached the Duke's estate. After much deliberation, she had finally decided to accept his proposal. Although Jane expressed surprise at how quickly she had made her choice, Eleanor internally admitted that there were no romantic feelings involved. For her, the marriage was a practical escape from her oppressive home. She reasoned that if she entered the arrangement without expectations, she would spare herself future heartbreak. As she gazed out the window, she quietly wondered what expression the Duke would wear when she told him her decision. At the estate, the Duke awaited her arrival, checking the time with restrained anticipation. Suddenly, he was struck by intense pain, clutching his chest as his eyes burned a feverish red. Collapsing against his desk, he questioned why such a violent episode would occur at that crucial moment. When a servant entered to announce Eleanor's arrival, he froze in alarm at the Duke's condition. Desperate, the Duke demanded his medicine and quickly consumed it. Though the servant urged him to send Eleanor away to avoid exposing his weakness, the Duke refused. He feared that if he let this opportunity slip, she might reconsider. Moreover, he acknowledged that he would eventually have to reveal his secret to her. Soon after, the two sat facing each other. Eleanor calmly declared that she would leave her home and marry him. She apologized for her delayed response, explaining that she had been preparing a document. Sliding it across the table, she presented a prenuptial agreement, emphasizing that a contract marriage required written terms. As the Duke reviewed it, he paused at a clause ensuring her position as wife even if he were to take a mistress. Eleanor explained that she wished to prevent any excuse that might be used to cast her aside. Provided she received financial security and a place to live, she would not object even if he later chose to divorce and remarry. Though he insisted such a situation would never arise, she pragmatically reminded him that no one could predict the future. Acknowledging her reasoning, he asked whether she had any further conditions. As they were discussing the contract, the Duke suddenly winced in pain, his teacup slipping from his grasp and shattering against the floor. Alarmed, Eleanor rushed toward him, anxiously asking what was wrong. Breathing heavily, he sharply ordered her not to come any closer and struggled to steady himself before apologizing. He then confessed that he suffered from a chronic illness. Deeply concerned, Eleanor offered to call for a doctor, but he firmly refused, insisting there was no need. Instead, he redirected the conversation to the prenuptial agreement and asked whether the contract would be officially sealed once he signed it. Though still worried, Eleanor confirmed that it would. Without hesitation, he signed the document and returned it to her, formally declaring her a member of the Evans family. He added that they could discuss the wedding ceremony later, but first needed to decide when she would move into the mansion. Despite the tense moment, Eleanor gathered her courage and asked about the nature of his illness. She reasoned that even if their marriage was merely contractual, she would still be his wife and needed to know the details in order to help him in an emergency. The Duke questioned her curiosity, but then reflected that she would inevitably learn the truth. Deciding it was better sooner than later, he admitted that his condition was complicated and asked her to follow him so he could show her something directly. He led her to a set of imposing double doors and explained that the quickest way to understand his illness was to see what lay beyond them. The doors opened to a staircase descending into the basement. Though uneasy, Eleanor followed as he lit a small lamp to guide their way through the dark stone corridor. As they ventured deeper underground, the atmosphere grew increasingly unsettling. Suddenly, the lamp flickered out, plunging them into complete darkness. Startled, Eleanor suggested they return upstairs, but the Duke insisted they continue forward. When she protested that walking in the dark was dangerous, he told her she would not need to walk at all. He lifted her effortlessly into his arms and instructed her not to struggle, carrying her through the shadows. They eventually arrived at a lavishly furnished room hidden beneath the mansion. Setting her down, he revealed that this underground chamber was his bedroom. Bewildered, Eleanor questioned why he would choose to live in such darkness, unable even to greet the morning sun. Half jokingly, she asked whether he was a vampire who avoided sunlight. Recalling the rumors she had heard, his expression turned unreadable as he asked whether she would run if he admitted it were true. She answered honestly that she would, reasoning that being bitten by a vampire would mean death. Pulling her closer, he murmured that she would not die and would feel neither pain nor suffering, only pleasure. Flustered, she urged him to stop teasing and demanded a serious explanation. His demeanor shifted, and he solemnly revealed that if his illness were not cured within 2 years, he would die. The only remedy, he confessed, was receiving her blood. Shocked and struggling to comprehend his words, Eleanor barely had time to react before he drew near and bit into her neck. As he drank her blood, a strange and overwhelming sensation consumed her. The feeling was intensely familiar, identical to a mysterious encounter she had experienced before. When he finally pulled away, his gaze was calm yet piercing as he asked if she was all right. Eleanor remained dazed and trembling, clutching her neck and questioning what had just happened to her. The Duke calmly confessed that he had drunk Eleanor's blood. Shocked, she demanded to know what he meant, but he fixed her with an intense stare and revealed the truth. He was a half-vampire, born with both human and vampire blood. Eleanor could hardly believe him and wondered if this was some cruel joke. He firmly denied it, reminding her that she had just witnessed him drink from her. Horrified, she recalled that the former Duke Evans had been celebrated as a hero who exterminated vampires, making it unthinkable that his own son could be one. The Duke then exposed a long-buried family secret. The hero was not his biological father. 28 years earlier, his mother had an affair with a pure-blooded vampire and conceived him. After giving birth, she took her own life, leaving the former Duke to raise a child who did not share his blood. Despite the betrayal, the man chose to love and protect him as his own son. Meanwhile, Clive's true father, the pure-blooded vampire, became the target of the royal decree that ordered the extermination of vampire kind. By the time the former Duke learned the truth, he was already bound to hunt them. He kept Clive's heritage secret while eradicating the pure-blooded clan, believing that destroying their lineage might sever the source of his son's vampiric nature and allow him to live as a human. However, the Duke explained that his thirst for blood only intensified with age. Each time he resisted, unbearable chest pains racked his body. Though he relied on medicine to suppress his urges, he admitted that within a year he would likely lose his sanity and become a mindless beast. The only way to prevent that fate was to continue drinking Eleanor's blood. Struggling to accept that the man before her was truly a vampire, Eleanor stared at him in disbelief. To prove his claim, he drew a knife and slashed his own neck. She gasped in horror, urging him to stop the bleeding, but the wound healed within seconds. Calmly, he explained that shallow injuries closed almost instantly for vampires, asking whether she now understood that he was not human. Shaken by the undeniable evidence, Eleanor fell silent. The Duke then coldly asked what she would do if she wished to void their contract upon learning his true nature. When she hesitated, he declared with chilling seriousness that if she rejected the agreement, he would simply drain her blood and kill her on the spot. He insisted he was not joking. Seizing her wrists, he pinned her down and demanded awaited her answer. Smiling faintly, he remarked that predators instinctively chase fleeing prey, even when not hungry, and that she was his prey. Leaning close to her neck, he reminded her of her claim that she was frigid and proposed a bargain. If she married him, she could live in luxury without fulfilling wifely duties. In exchange, he would only require her blood, which he described as a far kinder alternative to death. Breathing heavily but steadying herself, Eleanor replied that there was no need for threats. She agreed to give him as much blood as he needed. The Duke was visibly startled by Eleanor's calm acceptance and demanded that she repeat herself. Still pinned beneath him, she explained evenly that the only difference was that her partner in this contract marriage happened to be a vampire rather than a human, and to her, that was not a serious issue. Meeting his gaze without fear, she politely asked him to release her. After studying her for a long, breathless moment, he finally let her go. Standing beside the bed, he questioned whether she was truly fine with such an arrangement. Sitting up and straightening her clothes, Eleanor confirmed that she was. Inwardly, she reasoned that losing a small amount of blood would not kill her, and her expression showed quiet resolve despite her exhaustion. When he asked whether there was anything else to settle before the marriage, she agreed that they had covered everything. They acknowledged that the contract was now official. Extending his hand, the Duke stated that he looked forward to their future together, and Eleanor clasped it, sealing their agreement with a formal handshake. He informed her that he would oversee all wedding preparations and that she only needed to wait for his message. However, he issued a stern warning: his true identity must remain secret. Should she reveal it, she would share his fate and be executed as his wife. Eleanor reflected on the gravity of that threat yet remained composed. To her, his vampiric nature mattered little compared to the chance to escape her father's oppressive household. Freedom was worth the risk. Back at the Topaz estate, Jane delivered a letter from Marchioness Melania, surprising Eleanor. Soon after, she attended the Marchioness's tea party. As she sat among the elegantly dressed guests, she reflected on how swiftly her engagement to the Duke had been arranged. She knew the Marchioness stood at the center of high society, where every aristocratic rumor converged. Only fashionable young ladies and those embroiled in scandal were typically invited, which made Eleanor uneasy. She wondered why she had been summoned and whether her contract marriage had already become gossip. A cheerful green-haired guest approached her, expressing delight at finally being able to speak with her. The girl mentioned having seen her at the recent engagement party, reminding Eleanor of her public humiliation. Though she admitted she had avoided social events in the past due to her discomfort with conversation, she resolved to participate more actively moving forward. After all, once she became Duchess, regular appearances would be unavoidable. Observing her closely, the Marchioness inquired whether Eleanor's partner would accompany her at such events. The word startled her. Then, before the room, the Marchioness revealed that although Eleanor's engagement to Lord Keister had ended, she was now to marry Duke Evans. Gasps rippled through the gathering. Eleanor was stunned at how quickly the news had spread. The Marchioness implied that the Duke had been the reason behind Eleanor's broken engagement. Realizing Angela must have planted the rumor, knowing the Marchioness could spread it instantly, Eleanor understood she had been painted as a scheming villainess who stole the Duke. Refusing to show fear, she firmly confirmed the marriage but denied that the Duke had ever harbored feelings for Angela. She added that her new engagement had nothing to do with her broken one and dismissed Angela's story as baseless. The Marchioness responded skeptically, asking whether Eleanor truly meant to accuse her own sister of fabricating such a bold lie. Marchioness Melania regarded Eleanor with a cold, appraising stare as the atmosphere at the tea table turned tense. It was observed that Angela lied as naturally as she breathed, yet her carefully crafted image of innocence made society accept her words without question. Because she appeared so pure, no one imagined she could fabricate such stories. Maintaining her composure, Eleanor stated that she was merely denying the rumors because they were untrue. She calmly suggested that if the Marchioness doubted her, she was free to confirm the matter directly with Duke Evans himself. The Marchioness closed her eyes thoughtfully and replied that time would soon reveal which sister was lying. Eleanor offered no further argument and quietly endured the scrutiny. Upon returning to the Topaz estate, Eleanor was greeted by a servant, but her thoughts remained troubled. Though she had clearly refuted the gossip, she worried that fresh rumors might still spread and bring unnecessary trouble upon the Duke. As she climbed the stairs, loud, hysterical sobbing echoed through the hall. She immediately realized the source. Below, Angela wept dramatically in their parents' arms. When Eleanor asked what had happened, her father, the Count of Topaz, turned on her furiously and demanded whether she lacked even the slightest sympathy for her crying sister. Eleanor replied coldly that she had no reason to feel sorry. The Count was stunned by her bluntness, and when she added that Angela's tears were hardly unusual, her mother cried out in outrage. Angela then played the part of the self-blaming victim, tearfully insisting everything was her fault and begging her parents not to worry. They instantly showered her with praise, calling her kind and faultless. Watching the familiar performance, Eleanor felt only exhaustion. Attempting to withdraw, she remarked that since Angela herself claimed responsibility and she was unaware of the details, she would take her leave. Her father stopped her sharply, accusing her of always obstructing Angela's happiness. Confused, Eleanor asked what he meant. The Count declared that he had heard Angela was the one who first received Duke Evans' affection. He accused Eleanor of whispering lies lies to the Duke in order to steal him away, calling her greedy and insisting that Angela had been meant to become Duchess. Eleanor countered that Angela was already engaged to Lord Jules and questioned why the situation was being twisted to portray her as the thief. If anything, she pointed out Angela had taken her own fiancé first. Angela interrupted with renewed sobs, claiming she and Jules had mutually parted. Pressed for details, she spun another tale. She had intended to marry Jules, but he still harbored lingering feelings for Eleanor. At the same time, she allegedly discovered that Duke Evans had secretly loved her. Yet somehow, he ended up proposing to Eleanor instead. Through tears, she implied that Eleanor must have slandered her to the Duke, causing him to treat her cruelly. Eleanor immediately recognized the accusation that Angela was suggesting she had sabotaged her reputation to claim the Duke. Firmly, she stated the story was impossible, as she had never known of any supposed feelings. Regardless of Angela's tears, the fact remained that she and the Duke were to be married. Angela gasped in shock at her confirmation and collapsed back into their mother's arms, wailing that both Jules and the Duke had been stolen from her. Frustrated by the absurdity, Eleanor silently questioned the logic of it all. The Count angrily declared he would not permit the marriage, insisting the engagement rightfully belonged to Angela. Eleanor answered steadily that the matter had already been decided and would not be undone. Eleanor informs her father that the Duke will arrive at the Topaz estate the following week to formally greet the family and solidify their forthcoming marriage. Instead of pride or relief, her announcement provokes explosive anger. The Count flatly refuses to accept it. He orders her to go to the Duke immediately, break off the engagement, and persuade him to marry Angela instead. In that instant, Eleanor realizes that any hope of a calm, proper conversation has completely disappeared. Though shaken, she remains composed. She tells her father that she will no longer yield anything to Angela. For years, she explains, she has carefully measured her speech for her parents' sake and tiptoed around Angela's emotions to preserve harmony in the household. She has endured misunderstandings, accusations, and silent resentment without protest, but she refuses to continue living as though her own wishes hold no value. Her firm declaration leaves both of her parents visibly stunned. A fleeting memory crosses her mind of a time when they cherished her as if she were truly their own daughter, when they promised to stand by her no matter what. That warmth feels distant now. In the present, the Count rebukes her harshly, accusing her of selfishness and ingratitude. He demands to know whether she has forgotten the kindness they showed in raising her. Her mother adds bitterly that marrying before Angela is absolutely unforgivable. Hearing this, Eleanor understands that their affection was conditional all along. She decides she will no longer cling to those fragile remnants of the past. Calmly but decisively, she announces that she does not need their permission anymore. She will leave the house. The Count coldly asks whether she comprehends the consequences. Leaving the family means erasing her name from the Topaz registry, surrendering her inheritance, forfeiting her noble status, and losing the right to bear the family name. Eleanor acknowledges that she understands perfectly, yet inwardly she thinks that any loss is preferable to remaining bound to a family that denies her dignity and autonomy. Her father warns that she will regret abandoning them merely to become a duchess. She thanks him for the warning with a faint, steady smile, stating that her mind is already made up. With that, she excuses herself, leaving her parents speechless. She closes the door firmly behind her as her father's angry shouts and Angela's theatrical sobs continue to echo down the corridor. Retreating to her bedroom, she collapses onto her bed. The weight she has carried for years seems to lift all at once. She reflects that she has finally cast aside both the house and the family that constrained her. Instead of fear, she feels a bright, exhilarating sense of freedom. The following morning, she awakens unusually refreshed, realizing it has been a long time since she slept so peacefully. A knock sounds at her door. When she permits entry, 3 maids step inside, visibly uneasy. They inform her that the master has ordered them to clear out all of her belongings at once. Eleanor immediately recognizes the gesture as intimidation, a final attempt to pressure her into reconsidering by forcing her out abruptly. Rather than react emotionally, she sighs softly. Maintaining her composure, she instructs them to leave the furniture untouched and simply pack the dresses from her wardrobe. Her calm response makes one thing unmistakable. She has no intention of retreating from her decision, and she is fully prepared to sever herself from the life she once endured. However, she adds that thanks to her father's actions, she can proceed directly to the Duke's residence that very day. With composed irony, she even asks them to convey her gratitude to the Count for making the decision easier. The maids can only stare in stunned silence as she finalizes her departure. From an upstairs balcony, Angela watches in growing panic and calls urgently for her father. She fears that if matters continue unchecked, Eleanor will truly marry Duke Evans. The Count dismisses her anxiety, arrogantly insisting that without the backing of the Topaz family, no ducal household would approve such a union. Yet Angela remains uneasy. As she watches Eleanor's carriage depart, she wonders whether the Duke would truly cast her sister aside so easily. A calculating expression overtakes her distress. Realizing that a wedding cannot proceed if circumstances prevent it, she declares that she has devised a plan and shares her intention with her parents. Meanwhile, Eleanor arrives at the Duke's grand estate. A butler greets her formally, explaining that his master has already been informed of her situation. The previous day, immediately after quarreling with her parents, she had written to the Duke's family in haste. Though she worried she might have overlooked details, she She is relieved that her proposal was accepted. The butler glances at her modest luggage, surprised that she has brought so little. Eleanor simply replies that everything she needs is already there. Satisfied, he escorts her inside. She is soon received by Duke Clive Evans. Apologizing for arriving earlier than expected, she is assured that preparations had already been made. The Duke then inquires why she severed ties with the Topaz family. Eleanor explains that they forbade her from marrying him while Angela remained unmarried. By removing herself from the family registry, she freed herself from needing their permission. With faint amusement, Clive questions whether marrying him outweighs her former family ties. She answers candidly that what she truly desired was freedom. When he observes that she has already obtained it, she counters that freedom is meaningless without security. By marrying him, she ensures stability and avoids the fear of destitution. Clive laughs, remarking that many women have pursued him for wealth and influence, yet she is the first to seek only a stable life, especially after relinquishing her noble status. When she asks whether losing her family's backing will inconvenience him, he replies that he conveniently lacks parents who might interfere. Stepping closer, he reminds her that she is the sole woman he can marry, as she possesses the holy ruby. He then grants her freedom to spend the afternoon as she wishes until dinner. Eleanor requests access to the library, and the butler William is instructed to escort her. The library proves immense and breathtaking. Determined to better understand her future husband, she searches for texts on vampire ecology. She locates an ornate volume titled the Volcalac Legend Notebook, a compilation of rare and supposedly extinct creatures. Within its pages, she reviews accounts of vampires, long believed eradicated, confirming familiar traits such as weakness to sunlight and a preference for raw meat and wine. As she turns a page, a loose photograph slips free. She recognizes the man pictured as the Duke's father. However, her composure falters when she notices the woman standing beside him. Around the woman's neck hangs the identical ruby Eleanor now wears. Shocked, she instinctively grasps her necklace, her thoughts racing as she wonders who the mysterious woman was, and why she bore the same holy ruby that now binds Eleanor's fate to the Duke.